Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to go over how you can beat the T15 Shane Raid. Now, there is going to be two differences between my account and your account, and so I made a GIMP for that. The first thing is that I obviously have a completion buff that you won't have access to if you're beating the T15 Shane Raid for the first time. And secondly, I also have a very high Codex. I have, for example, 1700 attack coming in from Codex. So I gave myself a significant GIMP to kind of make up for the difference between, those two things that I have that you probably won't have. And then at the end of this video, like after I go over the Shane Raid and actually show you a clear of me doing it, I'm actually going to talk about the previous video I did where I'm telling you how you can farm the T15 Shane Raid, and I'm going to talk about the two differences between that video and this video and the intention between the two videos, because I think there is unfortunately a miscommunication there where I didn't where I wasn't clear enough with the intention of the previous video. So anyway, let me get into this video and talk about the 4 units that I'm using and talk about the gimps that I've given them. So first of all, I'm going to go with my DPS, which is Yonhee. This is the gears that I'm using. There isn't any radiant piece. I'm assuming that if you're able to do this, you probably have like this equipment. You have a plus 20, Transcend 5 weapon and at least a plus 10 armor pieces. I'm using the earrings of the Transcender, which everyone should have because you get this for free from the very hard chapter 3 clear. So everyone should have this one. Now I'm purposefully not equipping a ring on her. A ring would give her an extra 650 attack, which is this any ring I give her. So I purposely took this off to give her a gimp between the Codex stats, because if you look at my Codex, I'm getting 1750 attack from this. So if I remove 650 attack, that would be about 1100 attack, right? And I'm assuming that people would have about 1100 attack or so in their Codex buff if they're attempting this. I don't expect you to have 1700, but you probably could get away with like 1100 or so. And secondly, I also have that completion buff of 20% attack. So if you look at my Yonhee's Codex, if you look at her potential, she has 288 attack coming from potential because she only has level 9 potential. You probably want to have like higher potential when you're doing this. You probably have like 12 or maybe even 13, 14, 15. At 15, it's about 1000 attack. So it's like 700 attack that I'm leaving off the board that I didn't put in here. And I'm hoping that 700 attack is similar to what I would get from that 20% completion buff that I have that you don't have if you're doing it for the first time. You might need to go all the way to 15 if you're really unlucky and you don't have anything like if you don't have like other Rage Revive accessories or something. If you don't have a legendary pet, if you're forced to use the Shay pet that I'm using, you might have to make up the stats somewhere else. So you might actually have to go up to like maybe 13, 14, or even 15 in attack potential to be able to deal enough damage. But for me, I'm only having a level 9 attack, and I've also removed the ring to kind of hopefully make her similar to what you might have when you're doing this. So next I'm going to talk about Scott. Now for Scott, obviously you would want to bring a mercenary commander set. Again, I don't have any radiant pieces on him. I have a Rage of Ring equipped, and I talked about this in the previous video as well. I'm hoping that everyone will have access to at least one L plus accessory of your choice. Hopefully within the next few weeks we're getting something like that. That's my hope anyway, so that you can select whatever you want. You can pick, I'm assuming most people are either going to pick a Revive or Rage accessory that they want, and I'm going to put it on Scott because if he dies, then the whole raid fails because everyone is able to get, they bleed and they would die out. So I really need Scott to live, so that's why I have it equipped on Scott. Now his potentials are 0 across the board, right? And so because they're 0 across the board, and he's gonna do minuscule damage, like the 1700 attack from my Codex buff isn't really much on him, because I'm not bringing him to do damage. I just want him to survive. And if you look at the Codex stats that I'm getting for defense and HP, it's not that different from what you might have. Let's look at it. So for defense, I get 412. Most of the people that I talk to have like between 250 to 300 defense or so. So I have about an additional 100 to 150 more defense, and my HP is about 6,600. I'm assuming most people would have probably around like 4,000 HP or something. So the difference between his potentials, hopefully is enough of a gimp because I don't know what else I can take off to reduce his stats even more. But that's what I'm using, and I'm hoping that this is something that hopefully more people can get around this kind of stats, like 2,700 defense, 40k HP. Anyway, but this is what I'm using. This is all I could get to. I couldn't figure out how to make it even more, give him even more of a gimp while still having him survive. So this gimp of zero potentials hopefully makes up for that buff that I'm getting of 20% defense and HP, and my increased Codex buff. Now I'm going to talk about Serena. I had to use Serena instead of Karen because Serena does like a lot of things for this raid that are really useful. The first thing that she does is she increases the AoE skill damage of all the allies. Now this is useful because you want to kill off those minion adds. So I found that using her was I was more easily able to do this than using Karen, especially with this like gimp setup. So she's really good for that. And her 2 attack skills, they also do AoE damage. So I actually get a little bit more extra damage for AoE to kill those minions so that I can, do this raid easier. And she does heal quite often. All 3 of her skills that she's using, she's healing. So I have this cooldown set on her. Again, I'm not using any radiant pieces because, I wanted to use something that probably more people would have access to. So that's the setup that I have. These are her stats: 2.5k defense, 9.7k attack, and 40k HP. Her potentials look like this, like 4 attack, 6 defense, and 6 HP. Again, this isn't crazy. If you're doing this and this is what you have, you probably want to get her stats, her potentials increased even more, and you also probably want to use a better accessory set. Like I'm using mercenary set, so I'm purposefully giving up whatever effect that it has. Like it only adds an effect if you're in field exploration. If you're using any other set, like if you're using something like an avalanche set, you're getting extra attack because every time she crits, her attack goes up by 30% for 5 seconds. Or if you need more survivability, you can use a Lazardier set or something, or you can even use something like a Salos set, which is outright increases their damage by 30%. The set. So I've given up, all the accessory effects for this by hoping that between the lower potentials and the giving up of the accessory, hopefully that's enough of a gimp to kind of have it where when you are doing it, something closer to what you have. And finally, my Len. So this is the only radiant piece that I'm using because I actually don't have another radiant weapon. Sorry, not a non-radiant weapon that I could use. So this is what I had to use. And I also didn't have like another gear that's non-radiant as well that I could equip on her. So that's why I went with this. So I went with the full defense gear. And again, I'm using a mercenary commander set as well, giving up the extra stats or effects that you would get. And if you look at our potential, it's also 0 across the board. So again, I'm hoping that that's enough of a gimp, like, having 0 potentials and having no effect on her accessories. And finally, by using a defense gear instead of using like an attack gear or a crit gear, I'm hoping that's also, all 3 of those are enough of a gimp to show you that hopefully these kind of stats are something you can get. You probably want to get a little bit lower defense because you're not getting the 14% defense from this, but hopefully your attack will be a little bit higher because of that. So this is my setup. I'm hoping that with these gimps, this is kind of something that you can get without the completion buff and with a lower buff from Codex. And now I'm going to talk about the formation that I'm using. So I thought about using the crit formation for a while, but I think this one makes a lot more sense because I'm using 3 units with 3 universal type units and 1 range unit. So Serena is going to benefit from the decreased skill cooldown. She's going to spam her skills more often, which is also going to give heals across the board more often as well. Yon He is going to benefit from the increased attack and increased attack speed from the backline buff, and Scott is going to have a little bit more defense, which helps him to survive a little bit better. So I found that this setup worked a lot more than the crit setup. So this is what I went with, and I'm using the Shea pet. Everyone should have this if you did the event. It's a free pet, and for the 4-player and 8-player raids, you get increased defense and increased defense basically you ignore 9% of the boss's defense when you're using this pet. So everyone should have access to this. So this is what I used, and I'm going to show you the run that I did. I've already pre-recorded it, so I'm going to show you the run that is recorded. So I'm going to talk about it at the end of this. So watch the run now, and then join me again when I talk about the run that I just did and some commentary on that. So I hope this gives you an idea of how you can approach this raid, how you can do it. I think this is easier to do than brute forcing it for the first time, especially if you don't have multiple raid revive accessories and you're missing, the completion buff. So hopefully something like this is a strategy you can use for your very first clear. Now I'm going to talk about the previous video that I did where I was showing you how you can, brute force and farm it. And why am I, talking about that? I know I have a completion buff, but I took that into account. The idea here is if you did this, like if you're doing what I'm doing right now and you completed it, if you're doing it again for the second time using the exact same setup with this completion buff, sure, you're going to have a little bit of an easier time, but it's still going to be a pretty hard raid to do, right? You still have to pay attention. You have to run around. You have to make sure you pay a lot of attention or you're going to die. So most of the time, as soon as you clear it, you'll probably just use a clear attempt and do it. Like it's going to be your one clear here and one clear for all of these other raids and one clear for maybe this one. And then whatever for remaining clears you have, you're going to use it somewhere. Maybe you're going to use it on your 4-player raid, like a variant raid or this one. But at some point, you're going to have a huge stockpile of these single, these tickets. Like I have 6 of them left, but you're probably going to have a lot of them. At one point, I had like 170 something of this, and you're probably going to start having a huge stockpile of it as well. And you need to use it somehow, right? And so that's what that video is about. Like that video is telling you that, once you've cleared this, and I'm showing you how to clear it now with this setup, you won't be able to clear that, using the setup that I showed you in that video if you haven't cleared it, because you need this buff and you probably want to, invest and make your DPS like really, really good. Like I used Dellins and Miss Velvet in that case. Was it Miss Velvet actually? Yeah, it was Miss Velvet. But, that video is after you've cleared it, how to farm it. Like that's a setup that you can use to keep constantly farming it. And that's also the reason why I used the pet that I used. I used Ming because she has an effect. Where is she now? I can't find her. Oh, there she is. Because she has that effect of clearing debuffs, which is easier to use, right? So when you are farming it and you want to do 1 minute clear so you can get through your 100, 200 tickets that you have or something, that's what you should use, like the setup that I have before. That's purely for farming it once you've already completed it. This setup that I'm showing you now, this is how you would complete it, especially if you don't have multiple revive rage accessories. Doing something like that on your very first attempt, is hard. But something like this, I feel, is easier. And I think the key here, actually, for me, was to use Serena instead of Karen, because it drastically improves your AoE damage, and she adds 2 other attacks that you're doing AoE damage for. The only thing with this one is that you have to be careful that if somebody dies, you have to restart because you don't have a Karen to revive anyone. So when I was doing this video, I actually spent about maybe 20 to 30 attempts, doing this over and over again until I found the perfect clear that I could, predict all the attacks and everything and get this done. So you might do it 20, 30 times, but once you've actually cleared it and you have the completion buff, you can start moving from this kind of setup to the one that I showed you in the previous video, because in the previous video, that's how you want to actually farm it. Doing it like this over and over again, in my opinion, is pretty tough. It's pretty taxing, because if you make a mistake, you'll probably die. So do this for your first clear. Then in the video that I showed you, yesterday, the previous video, that's what you're going to use to constantly farm it. So I hope that kind of clears up some of the miscommunication with that video, because I got a lot of comments saying, hey, but you have a completion buff, you have a high codex, I'm not going to be able to replicate this, and especially for my first time, I can't do this my first time. That's the point. That video was not meant to show you a first time clear. That video was meant to show you how you farm it. This video is meant to show you how you would approach a first time clear. I hope that clears up any confusion, and if you guys have other questions or comments, please leave them down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Now take care now, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.